All right. So we have a little bit of a different show for you on this episode of Mic Drop. We've done these before. We did this with Joe Brand before he started calling games with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And we're now going to do this with somebody a part of a new venture in the Pittsburgh sports media scene that is going to be very interesting. Kind of a new thing of its kind, and something that I'm sure fans are going to take to, especially when they hear the lineup. And we're going to talk with a member of that show, and that is Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. Mike Asti here, another episode of Mic Drop, made possible by the Believe Network, available everywhere you get your podcasts and played on SiriusXM. And as I said, we're going to kind of unveil something going on in the Pittsburgh scene. We are admittedly not breaking news here. She and her colleagues have already done so, but we're going to unpack it further so you can learn more. And then maybe we will talk a little bit about the Pittsburgh sports world and get some of her takes from, her background to now this one. So without any further ado, Ashley Wenskoski of Pittsburgh Sports Tonight now joining me here on Mic Drop. Ashley, thanks for jumping on. I know you've only been in Pittsburgh for a short amount of time. You guys are going to debut Pittsburgh Sports Tonight, on the 31st, I believe?
Yes. Thanks for having me, Mike. Super happy to jump on here and talk about Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. The show debuts next Monday, a week from today. Yeah. Crazy. On Monday, August 31st at 7 o'clock. It's going to be a half-hour show, 7 to 7:30 on Fox 53 in Pittsburgh, WPGH, and it's also a little bit of a regional venture. It's going to also air in the Johnstown Altoona State College market on WJAC, as well as in Steubenville, Ohio on WTOV9.
That's why it's unique. I mean, that's why it's really, really unique for this market. There's obviously a lot of media around, certainly in the region. There's a lot to consume. There obviously are 3 premier stations in the Pittsburgh market that everyone's aware of, but something like this that's really focusing in on sports, giving you kind of a combination of just a regular TV show and a TV hit. And then I did read you guys are going to kind of let your opinions be part of the broadcast a little bit more than maybe you would see on something like that. So before we get into all of that, though, you mentioned where it's going to be and when it's going to be. And we were recording this on the 24th of August, but you may hear this later. You may even hear it after the fact, so you can keep on learning it if it's after the fact. But August 31st, Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. How did this come to be? How do you know the inception stages? What can you share about how this came to be? And then I guess your involvement.
Yeah. So what I do know about the sort of inception or the idea for the show, Fox 53, WPGH in Pittsburgh got a new general manager, GM, in about February. His name is Tim McCoy. He is phenomenal and fantastic. And he's also the GM at WTOV9 in Steubenville. So he took the Pittsburgh station over earlier this year in February. And pretty much, there's been a news share going on there. They air local news from another channel in town. They actually had one on-air personality, Darren Zaslow, who's now a part of our show. Yeah. But it was mostly just sales and things like that. And they don't have a newsroom. And so Tim McCoy took over and really had a vision, a great idea. And he said, I want to do a local sports show every night, Monday through Friday. That's something unlike anything else in this market, that features opinions, that features analysis, features, takes, so to speak. And so that's exactly what we're doing. It's phenomenal. It's definitely going to be, I think, refreshing for the Pittsburgh market to have something on television that's a little bit less traditional, right? We're still going to be at Steelers games and be at Pitt Panther football games and be reporting and obviously have all that social media access and whatnot. But then on Mondays, we get to turn it around and kind of give our thoughts and our opinions on it. And that's really special.
Yeah, and that is going to be unique, at least in that medium. I mean, obviously, there's takes flying in every different medium within and around the market and all over digital space, radio, etc. It's not like the Pittsburgh fan is not receiving takes from people that maybe have a credential or have a resume. I'm one of them. I'm giving takes myself. But in this format, where it is a TV show that is presented every night of the week, that has the TV background, I would imagine that some, without hearing that or reading that, it maybe would not assume there were going to be as many takes in something like that. At least in this market, it would be unique, at least in that. And generally speaking, I don't know if you're aware, there have been some take like shows on the traditional TV stations in this market over the years. I was a part of one years ago. There are still ones going on, but they're usually later at night. It's usually 11:30 after the game. Sometimes you're bumped to midnight. This is more of people can eat dinner, clean up after dinner and do their dishes and maybe consume your take. So it's more of prime time. It's more of not trying to throw it in the background, to be honest. It's right there. And it's something that's promoting, allowing you to have the opinion as well as doing a professional program. I think that wraps together to make it unique, if I'm getting that right at all.
Yeah, the 7 o'clock hour is something I think that's really underutilized in television because it is that primetime slot. Like you said, the local, 6 o'clock, 6:30 newscast will be over with, and then it'll kind of dump into our show. And what's really great about it too is with sports, it's going to be such a unique time slot, right? A lot of times, the Pirates will be playing, or the Steelers will, maybe it's a Thursday night football or Friday night football, they're upcoming that night at 8 o'clock. So it's going to really give us a unique vantage point to both, I think, talk about the sports of the day and the week that have happened, but also the ones that are going to happen, that are currently going on. And yeah, I love the 7 o'clock time slot. I think that's going to be really great.
Yeah, Ashley Wenskoski of Pittsburgh Sports Tonight here. Mike Draw, Mike Asti, as we are talking Pittsburgh Sports Tonight and what to expect, as well as maybe we'll get some of her takes, speaking of takes, before the end of this show. Was that an intentional decision, or was it just how things worked out to not maybe want to fly right into what else is going on? Did you feel like it was an open slot in the market? Do you know maybe that's why that was selected, or was it just random? Was it intentional to go there?
Yeah, they sort of felt like there was just nothing like this happening in this market. I don't know much about the time slot selection, I'll be honest with you. But I think for the show's concept, they just felt like there really is nothing like this on television right now that is being presented by obviously people who have a background in television, myself, Jack, Destiny, Darren. And then kind of marrying it with that more opinionated piece, and really just having a nice balance of, we wanted to feel like, you're a part of the conversation with us. Like we're talking to you in sort of your living room. The real goal for it is to feel like a Good Morning Football or a Pat McAfee show or something like that. Where there's opinions and analysis, and kind of even the hosts might have differing opinions on a topic, really that banter, so that, any fan watching at home can be like, okay, maybe I don't agree with Ashley, but I agree with Jack, So.
Sure. Yeah, and you have the blend of two women, two men, so you're not going to be able to have, it's not like a woman watching is going to say it's just a bunch of guys talking to me, or even a guy watching saying it's just a bunch of women talking to me. You're going to get everything. In something like this, it's almost better television in a way if everybody doesn't agree all the time. You need some agreement in a professional manner. So, and some different perspective. Ashley Wenskoski here talking Pittsburgh Sports Night on Mic Drop. And as she kind of alluded to, she'll be joined by Jack Hillgrove, who that last name is not one to forget in the Pittsburgh market for sure. It's a legendary last name with the legacy of his grandfather. I kind of know him through some people. We've been around each other a bit there. I know Jack well enough to say he's a good guy and perfect for this. Destiny Sanchez also joining you guys, and Darren Zaslow. So that's a crew. And as you mentioned, it's something like this with people that have the resume to warrant this. It's also not something that sometimes these are created and people are watching saying, how is that person there? This isn't that either. There's a legit background from everybody here. You're not throwing in, say, a social media influencer or a YouTuber. It's all people that are warranting having been there for that audience as well. Because in the Pittsburgh audience, you're hitting people from 15 to 65. They're going to have takes and are going to potentially watching in. But that time slot will be interesting, and there's nothing really like it at that time slot. So that makes all kinds of sense. Now, in terms of what you're going to be covering directly, I also wanted to kind of get into this a bit because there were a couple articles out there. So I used to be with the Tribune Review. They wrote about this. Other outlets are writing about this. There are some that are mentioning, because you're talking it's going to be regional based. You mentioned how you're going to be at Steeler games, Pitt games. Obviously, they're the team within the city as far as college. But I don't know, and maybe you don't know this about the market yet because you're just coming aboard. But it's a unique market in a way, especially college sports wise. Obviously, Pitt is the team, but there are some stations that cover, say, Penn State and West Virginia more than others. There are a lot of Penn State and West Virginia fans in the market. There are fans of other teams too, but within the market, the DMA weirdly does include West Virginia. So it's odd that the DMA, which is a media term that you know, but I don't know if fans do, but the DMA includes the rival team of the team based in the market. That really doesn't go on anywhere else. So the Trib had mentioned that you're going to be covering Penn State and West Virginia. Is that the case? What is that coverage going to look like if that is the case? Are you going to be also there, or is it going to obviously lean to Pitt because you're in Pittsburgh? What is the coverage going to look like, at least just from that college side, before we get into the obvious pro side of things?
Yeah, that's a great question because like you said, it is such a unique market, and I think that's where the regional sort of idea for the show came into play, and have it air across 3 different TV stations in 3 different markets.
Right.
I will say on the college side, I do think it's going to be a little bit more Pitt focused. Obviously, we have the flexibility to be at Pitt practice twice a week if we want to, be around the team. So for us, for me, Darren, Jack, and Destiny, I think it's going to be Pitt focused. But the great part is we have other reporters. So we have a reporter at WJAC in Johnstown State College, Pennsylvania, who covers Penn State, who will be joining the show. We've been doing practice shows this week, and she's going to join us for a little Penn State practice preview tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Her name is Tyann. And then I've been told, I haven't been named, but another station within Sinclair, our ownership group is Sinclair Broadcast Group, from West Virginia might bring in a reporter to cover those West Virginia games. Okay. So the nice part is that we can pull from our other sort of Sinclair stations to get that coverage. Destiny Sanchez, one of the hosts on the show, is a Penn State alum, so I know she probably wants to get back to Penn State a little bit. So certainly some Penn State ties. But yes, we'll be pulling in other reporters from those regional stations to kind of give us coverage of those teams.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And it might sound like an insane question for some, and maybe Pitt fans will even be annoyed that I asked it, but it is a regional market, and it is something to bring up, just because when you're tapping into TOV, that probably in that area, it's probably split between Ohio State and West Virginia fans. Honestly, you mentioned Johnstown, a lot of Penn State fans, probably more than Pitt there. So you're hitting the region. There are going to be some people that maybe would like some of those highlights to be involved as well. So that's good to know that you're potentially going to spread your wings, because that also could make it unique. As I said, there are some, and I'm not going to call them out here, but there are some stations that cover the region better than others. There are some that really live and just say we're a Pittsburgh outlet, so we're only covering Pittsburgh, and kind of ignore the fans who are maybe more regional based. So if you're going to be open to the region, that right there would make it unique in that time slot. So that's also good to know. Again, Ashley Wenskoski with Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. Now, you mentioned the others. They're not on the show right now, so maybe I've talked to Jack. I might have him on soon. I've been on shows and been on with him in the past as well. I know his background. The fan base kind of knows his background. Give us more your background. I mean, you gave the inception of the show. How did you yourself get involved in this? And then for anyone who is not aware, I mean, I know from us following each other over the years, like, you have a TV legit background. You've been in TV in the Syracuse market and covered the Mets, for example. But more on your background. How did you get involved in this?
Yeah. So I so that's another thing that makes this show a little bit unique, right? As you've touched on, the 4 of us went to journalism school, right? So it's takes-based, but we're still going to do stories. We still want to be in there asking those questions. Like, we're going to have that old school journalism piece to it because of our background. So I went to Syracuse University. I graduated in 2023. And then after that, I had my first job, which I just recently left. That was at the Triopoly CNY Central, which is the NBC, CBS, and CW affiliate in Syracuse, WSTM, and it's WKOF now. It used to be WTVH. I know it's hard to remember all the all the call letters.
Yeah.
So I was there for 3 years. It was such a perfect first job for me. I loved every second of it. I feel like I created such a unique community of Syracuse fans that really took to me because they knew that I had the background. My parents actually went to Syracuse as well. That's where they met. So I wasn't from Syracuse, but I had such a deep tie to it that I really felt like I kind of made a special connection with the fan base. And I was really honestly devastated to leave because it was just such an amazing place. I love Central New York. I will always consider it home and a part of my heart because I ended up living there for 7 years with college and then the 3 years at CNY Central. But it was just time for me to kind of spread my wings in my broadcasting career. And I was looking for my next opportunity this summer. And it was just so unbelievable because I had always sort of thought about Pittsburgh as a next market in sort of a dream world, or maybe 2 markets down the line. You know, if you know how TV markets work, it can be hard to kind of climb your way up. And I'm actually from Pennsylvania, Jersey originally, but I went to high school and everything outside of Philadelphia, north of Philly in northern Bucks County. Very small town, but it's north of Doylestown up there. If anybody listening knows Bucks County. So Pittsburgh had always been a place for me that I knew that I would love to come work in sports and do this sort of thing, because I also think the fan base is just so passionate. I know they probably say that everywhere, but Pittsburgh sports fans are just one of a kind. And so when this opportunity came up, it was actually within the company because I worked for Sinclair previously. And so that's how, you know, the ball sort of got rolling on me coming down here and joining this show. It was very quick from, you know, the first conversation I had to the last. It was kind of a whirlwind. I was admittedly talking to some other stations and kind of figuring out what my next move was going to be. And this all came into focus very, very quickly, but I'm so glad that it did. Not only am I, you know, 5 hours from home in the Philly area, but I also, from those Pennsylvania ties, have a ton of friends that went to Pitt, went to Duquesne, and ended up staying in the city of Pittsburgh post-grad. So really just a dream come true for me to be able to go somewhere, because I feel like the TV business, you know, at times can feel transactional, for lack of a better term, just with kind of climbing your way up. And I got so lucky with my first job in Syracuse, in a town that I loved, that I was an alumni of the school. My parents met there. To get to go somewhere else that means a little something to me and that I have a tie to, being from PA and just being familiar with the city, is so special. And I'm so grateful. And I think it really worked out for the best.
Yeah, Pittsburgh is a nice, perfect market, especially for even a second job. But even if you land there and stay, and this is where your home is, because it's in that, you know, top 30, top 25, wherever it happens to rank in a given year. You have 3 pro teams. You have, as we talked about, this weirdness of kind of a regional feel, which some could argue it's a con. Like Pitt fans probably think it's a negative, but in all honesty, for a media person, it can be a pro. Like, there's more to cover. There's more to tap into. You're an hour away from hitting more things. And it is a nice market. And the people are great. It's a tapped in market. It's a loyal fan base. It's an avid fan base, as you're going to come to know, and you already are kind of aware of. And it's a fan base that will certainly not be shy of telling you if you're wrong, or if they believe you're wrong, or if you get something wrong that happened many years ago that maybe I mean, it's a fan base like that. But it's a former Pittsburgh Steeler, Plexico Burress, actually once said about Pittsburgh, and I believe he might have meant this as a criticism, but I think it's a compliment. He called it the big little city, because it's not Boston, New York. It's not Philadelphia, even. It's not New York City. And you'll probably know this. After a while, you're going to feel like you know everybody that you need to know, or around. Like, you might honestly feel like, especially now doing this, like, you might know everyone who's going to be like covering in the region already, or have met everybody already, which is weird for a top 25 market to get that done in 7 days. But that is the vibe of Pittsburgh that you would not get in New York City. Like, if you're in New York City, you're not going to know everybody for 7 months. And they may not know you, but you're going to be known in this market pretty quickly. and this is going to be obviously really unique and I think good for the market. So it is a perfect market in a way. There's some annoyances that always people can always have with some fan bases, I'm sure, but I do think it's that perfect blend for sure. Again, Ashley Wenskoski with Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. So I do want to ask you a few questions in which you can drop some takes. Before we do it, though, because you're gracious to come on this show, and also, of course, this is about promoting what you're doing. Is there anything else you want to get out there? Here, the audience, again, Believe Network, Sirius XM, obviously a lot of Pittsburgh fans following me and consuming this. About Pittsburgh Sport Tonight, either a misconception, just something you want to promote, something you think is going to be cool that you want to say? You have another 30 seconds, a minute here to give more if you want to before we get into the takes.
Yeah, I think sort of just, reiterating everything I said before, it's going to be different, but it's going to be different in a way that, we don't want to just be talking heads in that sense. Like we have the journalism background. There's still going to be stories. There's still going to be, we want to have presence at places, live shots. The studio is phenomenal that we have set up. We were just getting it into shape this week, the last week before the show. It's going to look really, really nice aesthetically. So a very professional studio. I think, it looks closer to something that would be on a network to me than a local TV station. So you can come for whatever you want to come for. If it's the personality, if it's the storytelling, if it's the studio. But I think that, the four of us have already started to gel together really nicely. And I think it's a great blend of Jack and Darren are, from this market, born and raised Pittsburgh, and then got to stay here. And Destiny and I are both joining, but with ties to Pennsylvania, since her first job was in Eastern PA at Channel 69 News in the Lehigh Valley. So I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I think people are going to enjoy tuning into it every night, and I hope that they will at least give it a try. I can tell you that another one of the reasons why I'm grateful and thrilled to be here is because of what you said, right? Like, I felt like, you don't get it in every market where the fans are so plugged into their teams, their sports, their media members. And I did feel like even for a small market, I had that in Syracuse, right? People, alumni all over the country, in New York, in DC, of Syracuse, are obsessed with the sports teams and following the reporters and hungry for that content. And now I feel like on a much bigger level, I have that here in Pittsburgh, and I'm thrilled for that. I think there's a lot of fans and a lot of fan bases that are more unplugged, and Pittsburgh is certainly not one of those places. And so I'm excited to kind of create that connection with the Pittsburgh community.
Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head. And the one thing you missed out on that Jack can tell you all about is training camp in Latrobe at St. Vincent College. That's really, really unique. And if you want to experience fans being on top of you and caring and having that unique, there are NFL teams that are doing training camps at luxury resorts out of their state. That is not what's going down with the Pittsburgh Steelers that are going to a small school and sleeping in dorms. But that's the perfect example too, because that, you kind of also said it, being in media in the region, you get known by the fans and they feel like they know you on a personal level. So you kind of get that small town vibe, and that, can be where they love you and also can be where they're annoyed with you. But it's like any relationship. It's almost like a media member and the fans in Pittsburgh have a relationship in a way. So that definitely will exist here. It does not exist everywhere for sure. Whereas they're just like these, people that are speaking to me that I have no connection with, because they don't even, sometimes in certain markets, the media members don't even engage. It's like, this is my take. That's it. Comes off, I'm better than you. That's not the vibe that works in Pittsburgh at all. Now you were in Syracuse, you were covering up there in upstate New York, but I know you had a podcast where you talked a lot about the New York Mets. So you have an ability to be tapped in with kind of the opposite of what's going on in Pittsburgh that I'm sure you're already aware of. This is a conversation now in Major League Baseball. Maybe there's not even going to be a season next year. A lot of Pirate fans and Pittsburgh fans for years on end have been screaming for a salary cap. This franchise in the Pirates has had really 3 quality seasons in 30 years. This was maybe one that was going to be promising. It's going down the drain pretty fast, and we can get into all of that maybe on a future show. But this is a market that wants a cap. The majority in this market wants a cap. You've experienced, though, a team in a big market that you've discussed ad nauseum that has had a lot of money to spend. It has not always spent it wisely. So you've seen that, okay, a cap doesn't guarantee teams with money are going to win, or that it would lead the Pirates to be better off. What are your thoughts on if Major League Baseball should implement a salary cap like the other North American pro leagues do, like the other leagues have? How much do you think that would actually change the fortune of the Pirates, or if maybe there's fool's gold in there for some fans, and if you even think we're going to get there?
Yeah, so, I really hope that baseball figures it out next year. Obviously, all signs kind of point to trending towards a lockout for at least a portion of the 2027 season. And I think that would be such a shame for everybody. Growing up as a huge baseball fan, I grew up a huge New York Mets fan, thus the podcast. But also especially getting to come to Pittsburgh, right? The Pirates are such an important part of this market. So fingers crossed on all of that. But to answer your salary cap question, we did talk about this at length on our podcast because Mets obviously have a payroll right around $400 million, and they are one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah.
So
you might be the perfect person in the Pittsburgh market to discuss this, to be honest with you.
Yes. No, I completely agree. And then we had the flip side of that. We actually had a lot of Los Angeles Dodgers fans who found our show, the show that we used to have in Syracuse from the 2024 NLCS when the Mets played the Dodgers and lost to them. And they just kind of stuck around. So obviously Dodgers fans would have a very differing viewpoint. My thing with the salary cap is that if you have a salary cap, I think you need to have a salary floor. And that's where a team like the Pirates possibly comes into play. Listen, the cap will even the playing field to some degree. I think what the Dodgers are doing right now is not necessarily sustainable. I think though, beyond the salary cap discussion, there's a discussion to be had about deferred money. I know that that's something that, the Dodger fans are quick to say, well, every team in the league can do it. That's not necessarily true. The Dodgers have a few more resources there to get creative and to get those deals done and to defer money in the way that they have been with some of their free agent signings. So I think, listen, it's worked out for the Dodgers. The Mets have been the flip side of that coin. The Yankees kind of fall somewhere in the middle right now with the really high payroll versus the success. I think a cap would be beneficial because it would limit, it would force some parity throughout the free agent signings. But I think it is a nuanced conversation because you look at the other end of that and, last year in the playoffs, you had teams like the Mariners there, right? That, don't necessarily have one of the highest payrolls in the game. So I think what would be important about it is also implementing the salary floor for teams like the Pirates, teams like the Cincinnati Reds, to force ownership to at least get competitive. I don't expect every team in the league to have Dodger money, to have Steve Cohen or Hal Steinbrenner money. They're not going to. But I do think baseball is at an impasse right now. And that's probably why you're going to see the lockout next year, just in terms of, owners that are willing to spend and owners that are not. And I will say, I think it's a shame for fan bases like the Pirates that are so passionate. People love the Pirates here so much.
Do you ever see clips of 2013, that first playoff game after so many years of not getting in?
Oh my gosh, prime Andrew McCutchen and all that. And so I just think that, fan bases like this one deserve a fair chance, and the ownership group isn't always giving it. And maybe, the lockout next year will give us an answer to that.
Yeah, that has to also be the case and part of the conversation, that if you're going to have a cap, you have to have a floor. And you'd imagine that you would, but they have to go together. And the other point that you brought up, there are franchises that can win in this market, in this climate, without having a cap in place. The Milwaukee Brewers have been a juggernaut for a couple years.
Brewers,
Tampa Bay has been in a World Series or two. Like, there have been Oakland way back in the day. Like, there are franchises that with a little bit of money can make something out of it. They can do it in different ways. But what I've always argued is, number one, the other pro leagues all have them. Sometimes they have them stricter than others. The NHL years ago put this in place after they didn't have one. And Penguin fans will, I'm sure, tell you, Ashley, the entire Penguins last 15, 20 years is probably because there's a salary cap. They wouldn't have been doing this before, and they weren't doing this before. So that led to the Penguins run of recent memory in the Crosby era. And really, while you can win without a cap, and it does not excuse Pirate ownership, because kind of what you're alluding to, I will certainly stamp and maybe go further on. There have been years the Pirates haven't tried to win. Like, that's just the case. They haven't tried to win. I do believe they tried this year, and it maybe is not going to work, but trying this year doesn't excuse not trying in the past. So you do need a floor to force more, and there are owners who are not always trying. But the other end of it too is you're going to have franchises without spending money that are going to win, but the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Yankees, even the Mets, whoever that have all this money, not having a cap in place allows this one advantage. You can make mistakes and make up for it via money when other franchises can't. Like, there was a year the Red Sox were in last place. They were like, that team was awful. They got rid of some players. They added more. They won the World Series the next year. That is something the Pirates can't do. If the Pirates would re-sign Skeens, if they would bring in a bigger free agent, if they would do what they did this offseason and do more than that, and then it doesn't work, they can't. It's harder for them to make up for that wasted money. Whereas you're mentioning the Mets, you've talked a lot of Mets, you had that Mets podcast. Obviously, this isn't a year that they're happy with the money that was spent, but they can easily scrap it, spend more, and then maybe turn it around next year. Like, the Pirates can't do that. If they would spend $400 million and lose, they're toast. There's not that much. They'd be in debt for years on end. So the opportunity of equaling things out does not exist right now. That some franchises can make up for mistakes with money, or as you mentioned, defer the money, the Ohtani contract. The Pirates couldn't even do that if they wanted to. Like, not every team in the league had a chance to sign Skubal. The Pirates couldn't have brought in Skubal. If they traded for Skubal, they're not going to be able to sign him. He would be there for a few months because he's never going to sign with Pittsburgh. He's not going to be able to get the most money there. It's going to be the issue with Skeens that'll be coming up here in a couple of years. Again, Ashley Wenskoski, we talked Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. We got her thoughts there on the cap. I do want to end it with the Steelers. So right now, the conversation for Mike McCarthy is, do you carry 4 quarterbacks? Do you carry 3? Do you cast off Mason Rudolph, the veteran who's won with you before but is really never going to be more than that? Do you get rid of either Will Howard or Drew Aller, the recent draft picks who have yet to prove anything and have had this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde preseason so far? Your thoughts, and what kind of would you do if you're Mike McCarthy in terms of who to bring to the season, how to handle this quarterback situation behind Aaron Rodgers? He's the starter, but if he goes down and he's likely to miss a game or two, who should go in and who should be on this roster for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Obviously, I've only been around the team a couple times.
Sure.
Headed to Steeler practice again tomorrow morning. I was at the Jets preseason game this weekend. So obviously this is coming from, just a week or so of being here, but
sure.
I do think they're trending towards keeping 4. I think that them possibly keeping 4 speaks to how highly they think of both Drew Aller and Will Howard's potential. I know that's a very obvious answer, but the Steelers haven't kept 4 quarterbacks on the roster since I believe I saw 1995. That is almost 30 years, over 30 years that they haven't done this, right? And so I think you have Mason Rudolph there as your proven vet. Like you said, you know what Mason Rudolph is. He's done it here. He's won here. You know that if Aaron Rodgers goes down in week 2, Mason Rudolph can step in and at least be formidable. Right. On the other end of that, Drew Aller has obviously shown flashes. I think they might think he has the higher upside, the higher physical tools. He obviously has done a little bit better, I think, in the preseason, especially that game against the Jets. Neither of them did well. They didn't score. But Aller at least, had that 38-yard pass to Lake McCree and showed that he can stretch the field vertically and can use his legs a little better. I think he's a little more physical. Will Howard, on the other hand, I don't think they're ready to give up on Howard, right? I mean, he was a 6th-round draft pick, but he won that national championship at Ohio State. I do think his physical tools are a little more limited than Aller. I don't think he has the arm strength. I certainly don't think he has the mobility that Aller might have. So it's a really interesting situation because Aller kind of has the draft capital too. They used a 3rd-round pick on him.
Yeah.
While Howard, is what you saw last year, which was really not much at all, enough to, show you that you're done with Will Howard. I don't know if they end up maybe putting Howard on the practice squad. We'll see. I think it's a good problem to have, right? Because the reality of the situation is Aaron Rodgers is in his 40s. And if he doesn't make it all the way through the year, you have the veteran presence while having two young guys that you're excited about. Obviously, the obvious topic is somebody's going to have to step in and take over for Aaron Rodgers next season. And so you do want to find out, is that guy or is Drew Aller, Will Howard even going to be in the conversation? And I think that's what they're trying to sort out right now. I obviously don't think they would keep them if they didn't think that, could be the case. But at the same time, carrying 4, you're obviously taking a roster spot away from someone else in another position group that maybe you could use more. So I guess we'll see what happens. Cut down day on Sunday.
Yeah, and McCarthy's made it clear he's not made this decision yet, despite what's maybe been out there. But it is a very interesting question that's even get into the national conversation because it is so incredibly rare, not just in Pittsburgh, anywhere. And as you mentioned, the NFL, you need everyone, all hands on deck. You don't know when you're going to play anybody. So having 4 quarterbacks when 3 of them maybe would never play is a risky endeavor, and you wouldn't probably even be considering this if you weren't in this weird dynamic. You have McCarthy coming in after Tomlin for so many years. He didn't draft Will Howard. That was the last draft of Tomlin. He drafted Drew Aller. After drafting Drew Aller, I was there at the draft covering. He called him his project. Like, that makes you probably feel good about staying on the team for the next couple of years, regardless of what happens with Aaron Rodgers. And obviously he's saying he's going to retire after this season. But then if you're Will Howard and that guy's the project, what am I? So like it feels like that eventually in the future, you're not going to have Drew Aller and Will Howard both on this team, probably beyond this year if they do both stay this whole season. Obviously Rodgers not going to be around after this year. And Mason Rudolph, I'll even say this has been out there publicly. I've said this before. I think he might even retire in a couple years, if not after this year. Like, he's somebody that has a lot going on outside the field. I don't think he's going to hang around and hold a clipboard for 20 years as a backup, which is probably what he is. But it's really risky, and this is what McCarthy's alluded to, that you're kind of mentioning too, to have a 42-year-old who has a birthday, Ashley, in December, if you've not looked this up. Like, by the playoffs, he'll be aging again. And if he gets hurt and misses games, you're going to have either Drew Aller or Will Howard, and they combine for 0 regular season snaps, both of them. That's a lot of inexperience behind a guy that's likely going to go down at some point and miss a game or two. There's a comfortability with Mason Rudolph, but you may also learn to know he's a very polarizing figure in the Pittsburgh market. Maybe unfair to him, but he's a little polarizing among Steeler fans. So we will see what's decided, and it won't be the most polarizing decision in the NFL in terms of naming a starting quarterback or a backup quarterback, and that goes to Cleveland. But it'll be up there. It'll be in that conversation. Ashley, I appreciate the time for sure, as we were able to learn about Pittsburgh Sports Tonight through you. And again, plug where people can find the show here as we let you go. Again.
Yes, please join us. Next Monday is our premiere. It'll be Monday through Friday, every single weeknight, 7 to 7:30, Fox 53 Pittsburgh, also at WJAC in State College, Johnstown, Altoona, WTOV in Steubenville, Ohio. We have social pages set up for the show at PGH_Sports TV on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We're everywhere. The show is also going to stream live on YouTube. So if you don't happen to live in our market or get linear streaming cable television, we will be going live on YouTube every single night, streaming the show. And then if you just want to follow me personally, I'm at Ashley Wenskoski TV on Twitter and Instagram as well. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to bring you back. We'll have to have going to have Jack back on. Maybe have you and Jack. We'll be able to recreate things and go at it here on a future show for sure. Definitely we'll have you back on to unpack more of what's going on, maybe the answers to some of these questions that we were talking about here. Definitely appreciate it. And I would recommend the Pittsburgh audience find you, follow you, but also the show and the network and everywhere you guys are. It's a lot, and hitting on YouTube makes a lot of sense as well. That's smart too. So you have a lot going on and a lot coming up. Ashley Wenskoski, I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Once again, Ashley Wenskoski, Pittsburgh Sports Tonight, August 31st, as she mentioned. It's going to be a regional-based program. Obviously, lean into Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. A lot of Pittsburgh coverage. All those pro teams are going to get their takes. You're going to get their analysis. You're going to get the regular news feel for anybody who does want that, but a modern flavor a little bit with, as she mentioned, more maybe, sprinkle in some McAfee shows, sprinkle in some traditional TV stations here in this market that people know what I'm talking about, kind of blend it all together, do it in prime time, do it with people that have a resume that if they're going to drop some takes, as Ashley did on this show, they're going to make some sense. They're going to be based in some facts. They're not just going to be, here's the take just to get some engagement on social. Like they're not going to make something, they're not going to make something up. They're not going to report on something or break some news that is not substantiated in some fact or talk to somebody. They're not going to do that. So you don't have to worry about any of that either. Again, Ashley Wenskoski, as I hope I've been pronouncing her name correctly. I asked her before the show. I think I hit it close. I asked her if I got around 90% at least in the pronunciation. I hope I did. But I get that too, even though my name's a lot shorter. So I live the life of mispronunciation. I know she lives that as well. So I hope I did did as well as I could here and got close. Obviously, Jack Hillgrove got that pronunciation down. Is somebody that this market knows very, very well, and probably for these fans would be the face of the show. But of course, they're all equal on the show. Destiny Sanchez as well, joining them. And want to get the full-on team there. So, as she also mentioned, Darren Zaslow, who was that staple with Fox 53 Pittsburgh. So, Darren Zaslow, Destiny Sanchez, Jack Hillgrove, and Ashley Wenskoski, Destiny Sanchez, Jack Hillgrove, and Darren Zaslow. That foursome, that fearsome foursome, giving you the takes, the analysis, and giving it to you in a traditional TV type of format as well. Something to definitely check in on. And then once it pops August 31st, as the show will drop before then, but then Live in Infamy at Monday through Friday, you can hit it 7 p.m. all over the region on multiple stations. A really unique idea for the area. I'm going to tune in, not just because I know Jack and now know Ashley a little bit from this, but just, again, it's unique to the market. I want to see what it's all about. Maybe I'll jump on there and have them on this as well. Again, this will do it for this edition of Mic Drop. A little different feel, kind of letting you know about something going on for people that may listen to this and in the Pittsburgh market, but also got some takes involved towards the back half of this show. Again, Mic Drop is available via the Believe Network, available everywhere you get your podcast. That's Apple, TuneIn, Google Play, etc. Streaming all over my social channels here, and also played on SiriusXM through Believe. That'll do it for this edition of the show. Mostly my takes and then interviews with others who are covering these teams on these future shows as well. But Pittsburgh Sports Tonight, August 31st. That's the debut. And then it's Monday through Friday in prime time. Takes, analysis, everything in between, TV format. Get excited.